name is Grace, and you're listening to the Homebody Podcast. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you'll notice that I just started dropping some new field notes episodes, which are short thoughts, hot takes, little teaching moments, spicy, casual, spontaneous formats. And you will have also noticed that the most recent one of those, I shared this moment where I really just had it with being on Zoom calls and watching and listening to so many people yet again sob from deep wells of unworthiness and shame that they are so afraid that they're a bad person. You'll notice this is a theme here on what I've been dropping so far this year, because a lot of our frameworks that we use to support external validation that we're good, they're falling apart and the gaps are being exposed, and we have all these little tendrils and roots looking around for new homes, new ways to confirm our goodness and our worthiness. And I 100% stand by that episode, that tone. I'm bringing it to the party. And I also know that some of you don't get as much intel from pure resonance and tone as others of you do. So I'm going to spend some more time breaking this down, because really, there isn't really anything else we can do until this pain starts to move, until some of these judgments start to crack, because otherwise all of your doing is informed by this fear that you're a bad person, or that you could be, and what that punishment will be, which means you are probably doing a lot of things to prove to yourself and others in the world that you're not bad, that you're not the problem. And this is not your mission. This is not why you're here. This is not your work. What this is blocking what I know is actually in there inside of you, which is a courageous, clear, and profoundly creative voice and vision. But it's currently hiding behind this thick shroud of, but what if I'm bad? Or what if that makes me bad? And that has become the number one concern. Clearly, this is up right now in the world. And it's also really up in my world. And it seems to be very much the medicine that wants to come through me right now, because, as I've already noted, most of the episodes that have come up in the past few months have, in one way or another, been looking at the prism of this issue through different lenses, hoping that one of these lenses is going to mirror back to you or be something that can start to crack this for you. I am very familiar with this energy. I have walked this journey, this confusion myself, and it's something that I have truly transformed in my life. It's not something that I live in, I worry about anymore. It doesn't cause me pain. I don't feel separated from God or life or others. It's not something I'm thinking about. I'm also never wondering, am I bad? And so what has that freed up in me? It means that now, instead of acting from all of these shoulds and worries and fears, I can act from a place of true desire and clarity and motivation, because I don't have all this shit in the way clouding my vision. I don't have something I need to be true about me. I don't have this super loud wound creating static and this frantic, desperate need for validation blocking my frequency. It's not static that's blocking what I'm trying to do in the world or who I'm being in the world. And that's something available to all of you. And I'd like to help as many of you as I can get out from under that wet blanket, because I believe in you and I believe in what you're here to do and who you're here to be. And I also believe in you just feeling better and enjoying your life, because this is life right now, not some other ideal life that we're waiting to happen when everything gets perfect. That's not happening. This is it right now. It's not waiting for you. And I believe in who you're here to be. And I want you to enjoy your life as much as you can and feel alive as much as you can. It is not your destiny to feel this. This is not something innately human. It's a wound, and it can heal. So what's really contributing to this? What really needs to happen if we want to access a different experience of our worthiness? A lot of things contribute to this, and I will continue to pick through some of the loudest, some of my favorites over the next few weeks. But I've also already touched on many of them. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you go back and listen to the Judgment Over Mystery episode, the Transform Your Guilt episode, and the RIP Good Girl episodes. Those will set you up great for jumping into this, because judgment and self-righteousness is 100% in the way of you experiencing your worthiness. When you judge the world, you judge yourself. They are the same thing. And in our world right now of this amped up, triggered tribalism, there's a lot of strategies for using judgment to create a false pretense of safety. Using judgment to know where we are and orient to where we are because we think it will make us feel safe. But surprise, instead of making you feel safe, it just makes you feel like a bad person. And what is up is that there are a lot of people right now feeling really bad while spending a lot of time and energy and inner turmoil trying to be really, really good. Feeling bad, trying to be good. And this is leading to a lot of shame spirals, stuckness, depression, repression, confusion, judgment wastelands for your creativity, zero turned on energy for life. And it's a lot of effort going into your work, but not a lot of fruit coming out of it. And this is not even just ex-religious people. It's also showing up in people who did not grow up indoctrinated with images and stories about a punitive, jealous God. But they're still somehow plagued with a sense of shame and guilt, and they're super worried that the universe is going to take away their job, they'll go bankrupt, they'll lose their house, this whole elaborate framework fantasy dogging someone into being a super good little girl by whatever standards their particular tribe holds, as a way to guarantee safety, as a way to attempt to control the future. And while there are many things that contribute to this, again, many of which I've already spoken to on the show, what I'm going to talk about today is an approach we take to spirituality in general. And it's often taken for granted when actually it's a unique perspective and approach that has become conflated with spiritual practice, but they're not the same thing. It's actually just one method, one path, one perspective, but we've glued them together and said, this is what spiritual practice is. And because it's assumed when we turn towards a spiritual path or we return to one, this is something that comes in unconsciously and something that we're measuring ourselves by. So I'm going to try to differentiate it so you can be more aware of it and then untangle it from how you're trying to be in the world, from how you're trying to be close to spirit and also your spirit. And it can also get untangled from how you're attempting to create worthiness for yourself. I'm going to keep this episode pretty general and as simplified as possible and not get into all of the complex weavings of different lineages, traditions, and paths. I'm going to stay pretty general for the sake of simplicity and clarity. Generally speaking, there's two types of paths we could bucket. Different spiritual practices, ways that we can pursue a spiritual path. There's Sutra, which is an orientation, a philosophy for renunciates and monastics. And there's Tantra, which is an orientation for householders or people who are not renouncing the world. I like to call it a both-and approach. Sutra, methods, orientations that center on renouncing and transcendence. Tantra, methods that center alchemy and initiation. And I'll be super clear here, I'm approaching all of this content as someone deeply rooted in Tantra philosophy and practice. So when I say both of these paths work, both of them are valid, we can even practice bits of both, because there are some sutra-oriented practices and perspectives that can absolutely benefit you, 100%. It's good to know the difference. It's good to differentiate. And I'm also aware that I'm approaching this from a very tantric perspective where I'm proposing that both are valid. And I think it's good to differentiate them because they are very different orientations to the world for different kinds of people living very different lives. And unconsciously and culturally, most people still conflate spiritual practice in general with a Sutra path, which is a paradigm that supports renunciates and monastics. And the problem with that is you are not a monk living on the side of a mountain somewhere with all of your time, energy, and resources dedicated solely to spirit and transcendence. And because of that, this paradigm will not work for you. You will fail at it. You will feel bad about how you fail at it and then think, oh, I guess I'm not a spiritual person or spirituality isn't for me. But then we run into the conundrum that we are absolutely spiritual beings. And so ignoring your spirit, acting like it's not there, or pretending that matters of spirit don't work very well or don't apply to you, that also isn't super fruitful. And I understand why this more sutra orientation to spirituality is common, it's pervasive, because these approaches are generally classical, they're dogmatic, they're cut and dry, therefore they are easily transmitted and they're easy to preserve. And they're also exoteric, meaning for a focus on like outer practice. They have inner practices as well, but there's this exoteric orientation. This is bad, don't do it. End of discussion, renounce. Simple, easy. And Q, most institutionalized religion for monks or lay people are functioning on this paradigm. We even turned Jesus into a celibate man conceived by a celibate woman so we could just have a simple, cut and dry, exoteric, renunciate approach to spirit, right? Body is bad, sex is bad. Look at all these people we worship. They were human, but only like very, 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 very good, pure humans, not like all of us poor, terrible sinners who, have to have sex only because we're weak or whatever. This is bad. Don't do it. Very bad sin. You don't want to go to hell, do you? Follow these rules. You'll be very good. And you'll know that you're very, very, very good because you followed the rules, right? It's using exoteric means of knowing where you stand. And then bonus points, you'll be guaranteeing your future in the afterlife. We'll create certainty for ourselves. And while I think there are people authentically on a sutra path of renunciation and monasticism, and that's beautiful, these people usually know that this is their path from a very young age, and they desire it from a very young age. And it's incredibly obvious to everyone that that's their path. These people are authentically orienting to renunciation from a place of freedom and alignment. Beautiful. However, that is not the same thing as doing it to be good or to try to guarantee future outcomes and create a fake sense of safety in a wild world. And I was talking about this with someone else recently, and she said that something that's been coming up a lot in her work is questions around this pipeline that's happening right now from New Age back to fundamental Christianity, which is not a pipeline that I was aware of before she told me, but basically a bunch of people leaving the soup of New Age and going back towards fundamental religion. And at first I was surprised by this, but then I thought about it, and I can see how this trajectory is making sense. New Age was generally an unclear, hazy mishmash of a lot of things without a very strong backbone. And the world is complicated and loud and uncertain, and people are craving simplicity and certainty, even if it's oversimplified and it's pretend certainty. So I'm sure people are doing this. Again, some people are doing this from a truly beautiful devotional inner place, and it's in alignment for them. Religious experience or spiritual experience, I think, is a basic human need, and fundamental religion is the most readily available, it's easy to explain, it's culturally acceptable way to be in touch with those things. However, for some people, it's not authentic, and it isn't coming from a place of desire and beauty and spiritual experience. So back to Sutra. This is bad or not it, renounce it. This is the good or the goal, do that instead. Simple. People love simplicity. People like to know where they stand based on external obvious measures. For a renunciate-oriented path, there's one way to do it, and you need to make yourself do it, period. And you may be thinking right now, oh, but I have sex. I'm not doing this. I don't have an unconscious renunciate orientation to my spiritual practice. But you probably do. And you're probably also judging yourself and trying to transform yourself based on these kinds of methods and standards. For instance, if you're renouncing life in the world, desire is a big problem. And I talk to a lot of people who have a lot of things in the way around desire and ways that they disclaim it and avoid it and talk themselves down. And we could say, well, desire is bad. Desire causes suffering. Desire is a problem. I've got to renounce it and cut it off and cut it out. I was personally great at this. I was born with a hell of a lot of desire. And what turns out is if you just repress it, it turns into a hangry, yearning mess of a personal hell. So here to talk about that and understand that all day long. Here's another one. Well, I want money, but money is bad. I need to have as little money as possible or renounce it as much as possible, not care about it. And even for that, I'm still bad for the amount I have, right? The more money you have, the more bad you are. Fossil fuel is bad. I have to drive a car to work. I need to go somewhere. Or God forbid, you're doing it simply because you want to go somewhere. And now we've got even more bad desire going with bad energy expenses. And well, you better renounce those or feel really, really bad about it. I shouldn't do this thing, whatever it is, but I can't stop doing it. I must be bad. And we take this feeling of badness and we either soak in it, cue the shame spiral to punish ourselves for the said badness, and or we project the badness out onto the world and say, look at those bad people. They're worse than me. They made me do it. If we could just get them out of here, then we could be good. If we could just renounce them, eliminate them, weed out them from the world, well, then I could be pure and holy and ideal and perfect and very, very good like I want to be. Do you see how this can get macro and weird and tribal really quickly? And if you look at the world through this lens, understanding how this program is running, you can't unsee it. It's absolutely everywhere. And don't worry, I'll do a whole episode on the mechanics of projection coming up soon as well. And again, I understand the impulse to think this way, right? And I would also add, how's that going? Is it working? Because if we look around, I think it's pretty easy to see that it's not working. Think about what you look at in the world, in yourself, in others, and your instinctive reaction is to go toward what is deemed the very, very good and eliminate, renounce what is, quote, the very, very bad. It's probably a lot of things. And just so we're clear, that's a renunciate approach. And what happens though, since we're not monks, so then we're half-assing a renunciate path, we end up on this huge pendulum swing of unconscious, being very, very good by these exoteric standards efforts, and then binging, being very, very bad by these exoteric standards. And then the guilt of being bad swings us back into the very, very good. And then we get super tired and exhausted and bored because it's not working and frustrated. Then we go back to the pendulum of the being very, very bad. And if this isn't a path that we're called to, if we're not wholeheartedly and materially set up to pursue this 100%, we end up with a lot of repressed shit and shame because all of the, quote, bad stuff gets pushed down and makes us sick and stagnant, steeped in projection and punishment for ourselves and others, steeped in judgment and hatred for oneself and others. And when all that shit gets shrouded in shame and eventually becomes our very, very precious giant Velcro ball of pain, then what could have been just an experience or just a desire or just an energy becomes something repressive, violent, damaging, and connected to suffering for yourself and others. What's happening on the inside is happening on the outside. Hermetic Principles 101. What's happening on the inner level is happening on the outer level. What's happening on the micro is happening on the macro. And a Sutra renunciate path is about avoidance. This is poison, don't drink it, don't touch it. Oh, you're sick, we'll give you the opposite. You're feeling dark, let's add light. You're feeling down, let's go up. You're feeling bad, well, we'll focus on being good. How do I make this go away? Just stop doing it. Get rid of it, eliminate it from your life. And again, I'm not saying that that doesn't work. I'm saying it's not the only way. Do you see how this is a fundamental way that most people unconsciously and therefore unskillfully relate to themselves, relate to transformation, and relate to reality? Sometimes this works. For me, nothing's off the table. When I'm teaching, the way that I think about what I say is the best cue is the one that works. Let's use a personal example. I left social media several years ago. You could say I renounced social media several years ago because I felt like shit on social media. Do I think this makes me a good person? No. Was I doing it to be good? No. Is it a move I use to feel better than other people or more worthy than other people? No. Do I judge people based on whether or not they're on social media? No. I renounced it, if you will, from a place of deep alignment. I was super ready to be off those platforms. An inner transformation had occurred inside of me that made this a very aligned, sustained decision for me. And it continues to be that. It didn't feel like I was forcing it. In fact, I wanted to do it. I couldn't wait to do it. I think I did it without a whole lot of ceremony and way before I probably should have. I had a desire to get off social media. And even now, when I think about getting back on, nothing in me wants to. Fuck no. Nothing in me wants to do that. I wasn't forcing a renunciation because I thought it was the quote right thing to do. I wasn't doing it to be a good person. I wasn't eliminating it from my life because I was trying to be good, feeling bad whenever I didn't succeed. I was making an aligned decision based on where I was at and what my system needed and what I was ready to do. Feeling where my energy wanted to go inside, or feeling where my energy wanted to go instead. The inside met with the outside, so to speak, and from that union, I was like, this can be eliminated. We can let this go. And alignment is that gold that becomes available when the inner meets the outer. So now let's talk a bit about a Tantra orientation. In general, if you've already noticed, this is how I'm approaching everything I'm teaching. I said things like, nothing is off the table, or both can work, or the experience depends on the alignment or the input. That's all a Tantra bias, which I have. So if a Sutra path is a path of renunciation, Tantra is a path of alchemy and initiation. This is a very different orientation to what shows up. If the path is alchemy, well, everything is equal opportunity to become fuel for the fire. Whatever is here is an opportunity because it is fuel for the fire of transformation. Because in this storyline, this paradigm, alchemy is the goal, not renunciation. And this invites us into a stance where whatever is here can be less about whether or not it's, quote, good or bad. It can be less about whether or not you are super good at renouncing the, quote, bad things. It's more about, we've got full fuel for the fire. Brilliant. You're angry? Great. What can we do with that? What becomes available when we alchemize it? You have desire? Amazing. What can we do with that energy to serve your overall transformation and wholeness? You feel pain? Same answer. You feel pleasure? Same answer. Because the story of alchemy, the invitation is into a perspective where suddenly everything is an opportunity for transformation. Everything is an opportunity to walk more closely with life. There's a general orientation of yes. This is here, this is happening, and so we say yes to it. Because it's here, right? Pretending it's not here, renouncing its existence isn't helping, doesn't help. So what if we just start by saying yes? This exists, this is here. What does this tell me? What alchemy is possible for me? What could this help me transform in my life and in life? What could become available if I tried that? How can I work with it? Tantra has more of a let's engage with it approach. Let's engage and see what transmutes. What can we learn rather than this is bad, let's avoid it, end of discussion. In alchemy, anything can become anything. And the curiosity is less, how well can you renounce, and more, how can you transmute? The skill is not how good of an obedient avoider are you in relation to these exoteric rules. That's not the skill. Most of us are very good at that skill. It's reinforced through school and through institutionalized religion and how most of our parents were taught to be parents. The skill is not how good of an obedient avoider you are based on these exoteric rules. The skill is how am I transmuting one thing into something else? How good am I at that? How good am I at transforming something into its more true form and even knowing what that feels like or looks like? How skillful am I at coming into deepest alignment for the moment? Do you already feel how different these two approaches are? So let's go back to desire, for instance. If we're on a renunciate path, then we're renouncing desire for all things except what our exoteric practices tell us to do and point us towards. If we're on a tantric path, all desire is interesting. It's here. Now, how can I work with it? Just because desire is here doesn't mean you'll get it. But if you do get it, you'll get something else to work with, more fuel for the fire of transformation. If you don't get it, same thing. You'll get something to work with, more fuel for the fire. So again, while Sutra has this exoteric orientation, Tantra has this esoteric orientation, this inner lens. And in Sutra practice, everything in my life is renounced in service to spiritual awareness. But the direction of Tantra is, how can everything in my life become infused with spiritual awareness? If I'm not renouncing it, how can it all become infused with spirit? How can it all become alchemized with spirit? All the bits. Everything in my life can become spiritual practice when I approach it this way. Sex life, cooking, gardening, how I treat others, making my bed, praying, walking my dog, chanting, grieving, celebrating, enjoying, working. Everything can become devotion to your great work with this orientation. Because this practice is about transforming and about becoming a bridge. And again, obviously I have a bias for this orientation. It is my orientation. I'm a both and kind of lady. I find the good or bad, good versus evil approach to reality not useful or helpful for most people. And I think renouncing reality is a losing game if that is not authentically your path. And some of you listened to the R.I.P. Good Girl episode and I could feel it. You were like, oh, now the good girl is bad and now I have to renounce the good girl. But I can't. This is not an exoteric practice. It is not a set of rules that someone hands you telling you how being good looks. It is an esoteric practice, which means you need witnessing, guidance, and alchemical containers to learn to become skillful with transformation. But if the good girl is here, it doesn't matter. She's here. It's something to work with. If the bad girl is here, doesn't matter. She's here. Something to work with. Because in alchemy, the goal, the fruit of the practice is transformation, not avoidance. It's unification, synthesis, synchrony, rather than all feet over here, perfectly clean, not touching any of the bad things over here. That's not the goal. But it's what most people are trying to do. Alchemically speaking, the final stage is called rubedo, or redness. And I'm teaching more about this inside of the Ma membership this year. So you can join that or join the waitlist for that if you'd like more depth and exploration with this. But rubedo, the reddening, is what happens after the spiritual death. after the purification, after the solar awakening. And the good little girls are hanging out in the albedo, or the whitening, the purification space where we're like, ew, that's dirty, that's bad. Because they are only hanging out there, you're actually missing out on the great work. That isn't the great work. That's like stage 2. The culmination of the great work is not the albedo, purity stage. It is the reddening, or the rubedo stage, where light and shadow, good and evil, divine and human come together within one being, rather than staying on opposite ends of the pool looking across the way. And we've been programmed that it's a story about good versus evil and good has to win. But what if it's not about that? What if it's actually about integration, a story about both and? What if I'm part of both of these things? What if I'm also none of these things? And this reddening, this rubedo, has a strong feminine lineage component to it, as do most Tantra-oriented paths. The red dakinis and yoginis, the red Tara, Tantric Buddhism, and the Shakta lineage in India. The red dakinis are a problem if you're a classical monastic yogi. But if the goal is alchemy and the goal is integration, well, they're medicine. The red lady, the lady in red, she's kind of scary to all the good little girls because she's a contradiction. The good little girls are like, oh, but the pool is dirty and I don't want to get my feet in there. And she's like swimming around in the pool, having a great time. She's all the things that the good little girl thinks she can't be. And she's compassionate. And she's sexy. And she's like swimming in a pile of money. And she's holy. She's fasting and she's feasting. She's drinking all the blood and she's pouring out the wine. She's having a dance party on the cremation grounds of your illusions and false identity. Contradiction after contradiction after contradiction. She's intentionally dressed up as someone you think is below you or not as smart as you. She's intentionally dressed up to offend your sensibilities. Why? Because that's where your rub is. That's what's going to get the match striking. That's what's going to get the alchemical fires burning, and that's what she cares about. We have all these images of Jesus in like white and pure and, and that's why Mary Magdalene is a problem for that version of the story. Yet another scarlet woman in the way of yet another story about that we got turned into purity and being above the world. That's why she got eliminated from the story, 100%. That's why the Pope turned her into a prostitute, even though there's absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. She's in the way. We got to get her out of the way so we can have pure, white, celibate, monastic Jesus. Hanging out in this phase of albedo, the whitening, is a transcendy view of the world and reality. It's everything has to be ideal and good and pure and perfect. And everything that isn't that, I must transcend it and have nothing to do with it. But the world isn't good and pure and perfect. And it's why we think that a spiritual path is in contradiction to the actual world. But it's not if the goal is Tantra, which means weave. It's not in contradiction if the goal is alchemy. Carl Jung, quite an alchemist, quite a magician, in my opinion, or a shaman of human consciousness. Carl Jung said, in the state of albedo, one does not live in the true sense of the word. It is an abstract, ideal state. In order to make it come alive, it must have blood. It must have what the alchemists call the rubedo, or the redness of life. Only the experimentation can transform this ideal state into a fully human mode of existence. Blood alone can reanimate a glorious state of consciousness, in which the last traces of shadow are dissolved, in which evil no longer has an autonomous existence, but it rejoins the profound unity of the psyche. Then, the opus magnum, the great work, is finished, and the human soul is completely integrated. It's not just the upward pointing triangle. It's not just the downward pointing triangle. It's both together, forming a star. It's not just the yin, not just the yang, but both fully swirling around one another with a bit of one in the other. Very sexy indeed. Forming an impossible process where water doesn't put out the fire and the fire doesn't burn up the water. And I say it's impossible because it's magical. None of the alchemical practice are like, sit around and think about what you've done. Like, that's not a real thing. It's magical, meaning it's impossible for your mind to do it by itself. That's why it's a spiritual process. It's a spiritual perspective and a spiritual practice. It's not a mental one. That's why it's your great work. All of you has to get on board. It can only be accomplished if all parts of you are participating in the party and come online. Does that mean you will have to become responsible for them? Yes, it does. It asks something deeper of you. Alchemy is not cognitive behavior therapy. Nothing against it. It has its place, but it's not what alchemy is. Alchemy asks something deeper of you. Your spirit has to come online for this to happen. It's going to ask something more that you can only begin to understand once the mystery initiates you into something deeper and more true layers of reality, which is a ride I'm here for. You are not good, and you are not evil. You are both, and you are neither. So what if the red lady isn't the problem? What if she is the way? She's a problem if we're trying to live ideals rather than become humanity. But what if she's here to pump some blood back into your veins? What if she's like, I am the red. I am the rubedo. I am what integration looks like if you're not here to spend your life renouncing the world. I am what it looks like when you claim your part in all of it and take responsibility for that alchemy within yourself and within your heart. These are foundational principles, to everything that I teach, but also to what I'm specifically transmitting now and what we're practicing now inside of the Ma membership. If you're listening to this in real time on May 1st, 2025, around that era, the doors to join the membership open again soon on May 9th. And we're about to spend 5 weeks diving into this archetype, this medicine of the Scarlet Woman, the Red Lady, the Whore, and the Holy Woman. Offensive. Only if you're trying to be a good little girl living out your untainted, perfect ideals on the right side of the street. But she's medicine if you're interested in alchemy and full spectrum humanity and becoming alive. You could join the waitlist at the link below to be the first to know when the doors open. And if you're on the email list, there will also be a limited number of spots available to work with me one-on-one. If you'd like to go deeper, more personalized support. If you're listening to this in the future, you can join the newsletter or check out the website, all in the show notes, to get access to the archive of these teachings and access more current information about what's dropping and coming down the pipeline. I'm going to finish now with a reading, and this is from the Radiant Sutras, Insight verses 136 through 138. Consider all the pain and all the pleasure you have experienced as waves on a very deep ocean which you are. From the depths, witness those waves, rolling along so bravely, always changing, beautiful in their self-sustaining power. Marvel that once you identified with only the surface of this ocean. Now embrace waves, depths, undersea mountains out to the farthest shore. The light of consciousness illumines the world. The world reflects this splendor. Energy and matter, essence and manifestation reveal each other to each other. Individual soul and cosmic energy, pulsing heart and infinite awareness, are secret lovers, always merging in oneness. When the secret slips out, there is laughter and a flash of brilliance in the air. Be well, everyone. I hope to see you inside of Ma. Peace. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a few moments to subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and share the episode. These small tasks help our independent podcast so much. Be sure to also check out the show notes below to learn more about any resources, guests, or sponsors that we shared with you today. Our intro and outro music was created by artists Aaron Palovic and Jared Kelly. Our podcast logo was created by Elaine Stevenson, and this show is produced by Softer Sound Studio. Thank you for being here. Be well. Peace.